Hello, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to start our conversation. Are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Awesome. I would love to know more about little Lauren. What was she like? What drew her to physics and storytelling?
Great question. I think the people who know me would say little Lauren was very inquisitive and precocious, maybe a bit of an overachiever. um, but I have always been a writer. Since I can remember, I've either had a book in my hand, or a notepad or a journal where I would write down my daily observations. I kept a journal on all of our family vacations. I loved writing short stories in school. I was on the newspaper staff in high school. So writing was like really that innate talent, that I feel like I was just born with. And physics came in a little bit later. It didn't actually come in until my junior and senior year of high school. And I took AP Physics, and I had a teacher who really believed in me and awarded me a scholarship to college based on my achievements in physics. And when I applied to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so my college essay was kind of about all of my interests and that sort of thing. And when I got accepted to college, they said, if you join as a physics major, we'll give you they gave me essentially like a really big scholarship. And I said, okay, that sounds really cool. And so about halfway through college, I really started to blend the two together and see like how can I pursue both of these passions.
Oh, that's so incredible. Well, from then, you've made 7 transcontinental moves.
Yes.
How did each move shape your perspective on communication and innovation?
Great question. One of the, I think, most transformative moves was when I moved abroad. It was the first time I had actually even been out of the country. I was in my early 20s and I moved from the US to Switzerland. I did not speak the language. And I remember showing up on the first day, and my manager introduced me and said, "This is Lauren. She's from the US. She doesn't speak French. Can we hold today's meeting in English?" And the woman running the meeting was like, "No, I'm not comfortable in English." And so I sat there for an hour, sort of not understanding anything. And then I was kind of getting my feet under me and finding a place to live and grocery shopping and buying train tickets. And I really got a sense of what it was like to, be on the other end of communication that I didn't understand. And I think that was really eye-opening for me, right? Of like, what are the different ways we can communicate with each other? What's important about finding a common language? And I think that's a thread that I've carried with me throughout my career, is finding common language. And then the other moves I've had not only were geographical moves, but industry moves. I moved from the public sector into the private sector. I moved from kind of a policy academic world into big tech. I moved from big tech into startups. And so each move really came with like a holistic new experience. And I think each of those things taught me more about communications because the landscape was different, the knowledge was different, and you have to approach each situation with curiosity and not just run the same playbook because the same things don't work in different situations.
Oh, I love that answer. And you've had such a beautiful, rich, and vibrant experience throughout all these moves. Through this, or perhaps later, what was the moment when you really realized that you wanted to bridge the gap between technical complexity and accessible communication?
I think that if I had to boil it down to a single moment, it happened in college. And that's what really sparked my whole career versus it being a moment within my career. And like I said, I was a physics major. And so you can probably imagine I didn't make a lot of friends at parties because the kind of go to question in college is, what's your major? And when I would tell people physics, I always kind of got this reaction like, ooh, I hate physics, or oh my God, I can't imagine. And so, and then I taught physics as well as a TA for undergrads, and I started making it fun, right? I started again telling stories or drawing analogies or even doing demonstrations with my hands or just common objects you find lying around. And the thing I realized that I loved was seeing that moment in people where kind of the light goes off, light goes on, I should say, that aha moment where we're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And so even in college, I realized that I kind of wanted to chase that feeling. That's really what I wanted to do was live for that aha moment.
That is so incredible, and that really resonates with me as well, as just someone who loves that feeling even in my day-to-day work, and that brings so much joy and contentment to my everyday. And of course, you're not figuring things out every day, but you are kind of leaning into the possibility that every day there's something that we can learn more of. So you were the first communications leader then at two deep tech startups. How did you approach building communication systems from scratch in environments where none existed before?
I love working in this landscape. Um, Coming into it again from this mindset of I'm both an expert and I know nothing. And I think holding both of those things to be true at the same time is really the key. Right. And when I first got into startups, I was coming from big tech and generally large organizations. So I had the experience of like knowing what scale looks like, knowing what great looks like, knowing what a successful campaign looks like, and how it's kind of produced, if you will. And so going into the startups, it was okay. I know that that's the sort of ultimate destination, figuring out where we are now and what are the intermediate steps we can take as we grow and as we scale. And I remember in my first startup job, one of the engineers said to me, we're only a 50-person company. Some of these initiatives feel like they're better at a 500-person company, right? And it was great feedback because it helped me figure out how to right size and how to build a process or a system that worked for, the moment in time we were in, but that could also scale without having to tear it all down and rebuild. So that was honestly a really great learning moment for me. And again, continuing that lesson of there's no such thing as one playbook and coming into each new environment with that blank slate mentality.
You then also guided companies through every critical milestone from first investor pitches to IPO. What's the biggest communication challenge that you led these teams through?
Yeah, the biggest one, honestly, was an internal communications challenge. I think, especially for tech startups, there is a lot of advice out there. There's a lot of examples about what works and what doesn't, and how other companies have been successful. And there's kind of a playbook, right? You go Series A, and then Series B, and then Series C, and so you kind of know what to expect at each stage. But I remember during COVID, and I think a lot of people can resonate with this moment because there absolutely was no playbook for this. And like a lot of companies at the time, we had to make really hard decisions. And we had to do a reduction in force. And it wasn't just like a normal layoff. We were putting people out into the world with a massive amount of uncertainty, including for their health, right? And so we orchestrated a very personal approach to, unfortunately, parting ways with almost half the company. And it could have been an email, right? A mass email. We could have invited everyone into a Zoom call, but we took the approach of doing it one on one. And the feedback we got was we know why it had to happen. We understand we're disappointed and upset, but this was handled in the best way it could have been handled. It had that human touch to it. And I think that was also a really important lesson, that the crisis communications, the internal communications, never have a playbook. And if you take a people first approach, um, it tends to land better than if you're just following a step by step guide. And the other thing I'll say in that is, from an internal perspective, there's an outcome and then there's a process. And if people aren't aware of the process and you only communicate the outcome, they tend to be more defensive, more upset, right? Again, if we had just gone with the surprise email or the surprise Zoom meeting, it would have caught a lot of people off guard. But we were very transparent about the process. And so people knew it was coming. They understood why we had to do it. They understood the decisions that were ultimately made, that it wasn't about the people. It was about what is the best way to keep the company running in the short term. And again, when people had the transparency and they understood the process, they were more accepting of the outcome than if everything had kind of been done behind closed doors.
That is so moving and definitely something I hope the folks listening jot down notes of because people are people, and no matter what um, side of the business you're on, that is something that you would want to receive. And definitely when you're in those positions, that's something that you want to extend. And I think how beautiful that you were able to do that at such a time of uncertainty. That's really where leadership is tested. And in reflecting on all of your responses so far, something that I became really curious about is that those shifts in your journey from being the physics major and the physics TA and being at CERN to then being in this communications leadership role, how did that transition happen? And what is advice that you would give to someone who's looking to make a similar transition? You've shared that you've held so many different roles and had so many moves that you've opened yourself up to.
Mhm.
And so I would definitely suspect that that openness is a part of that journey. Um, but definitely from being someone so deeply passionate about those aha moments in technology to then telling the story of the technology in a different way and kind of rooting into empathy and just that the sharing and the dissemination of that feeling at a much broader scale in a different role. How did you sort of go about that in your career? And um, yeah, I'm deeply curious about that transition for you.
Yeah. At the beginning of my career, I was quite intentional. After I got my degree in physics, I actually went and got a master's degree in science journalism, which is a program. Then it was at Boston University, that scientifically trained people how to communicate, and especially in a journalistic capacity. So very early in my career, I was very intentional about it. I started my career as a journalist. Then I eventually moved in-house to science organizations and then found my way into tech. And I always had this mindset of saying yes is the best thing you can do for your career, especially in the early days. And most of my opportunities found me, where somebody I met at a conference remembered our conversation and reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have an opening. Would you be interested?" Um, right. Or I remember I applied to a role at then Facebook, in their DC office, and was swiftly rejected. And like 2 days later, a recruiter reached out to me and said, "Hey, we saw your resume come into this system. I know you weren't a fit for the role you applied for, but we're actually creating a brand new role in California. And and it was like this mix of somebody with a technical background, but who could also write. And it was to lead their engineering blog and their innovation communications. And they thought that they were searching for a unicorn, and they saw my resume come through and they're like, would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. And so I've always had this mentality of always take the call, right? Just see what it's about, and if it feels right, if it feels exciting, say yes. While you still can, right? And at the time, I think I could fit all of my belongings into 2 suitcases, so it was very easy for me to just pack up and hop on a plane and move across the country, 4 times in 10 years. But on the so when I was in those communication roles, I think part of the my advantage early on was that technical background, and so I could relate very easily to the scientists and the engineers whose work I was talking about. And I over time developed my own system where a lot of marketing or communications people would come in and just say, like, give me the nugget, explain it to me like I'm 5. And I would come in and say, let's go as deep as we can go. Like, I want to understand this and pull back the layers and really keep digging. And then you find, the really interesting piece, and you get beyond the surface level. And so, and then going back to, under that common language is like, okay, this is the thing, this is the nugget, this is the headline, this is the newsworthy piece. How do we then translate it into something that the audience we're trying to reach understands and cares about, right? So it's not just from a self-centered perspective of, we got this great result, or we finished this product, we're launching this product. It's what is going to drive that aha moment when we share this with people.
Oh, I love that. And I love both the intentionality and just the openness to possibility and embracing uncertainty because it's not, I didn't sense any sort of gripping on to one plan. It was just like this openness, but also this like thoughtfulness of doing your part to kind of move forward in the direction that you wanted to move forward towards, which I love.
Yeah.
Um, Something that I also love that you talk about is the end of guru guidance. And you talk about tuning into our inner authority instead. What was the moment that you realized that this shift was necessary?
This is a recent shift for me. So I left my corporate role earlier this year and started working for myself. And when I started doing that, I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I do this? And very quickly became inundated with, ads and emails and people trying to sell me a solution, find 100 clients in 100 days, or, build a 7-figure business. And they're all, a copy paste or just stamp and repeat process that may have worked for one person, but are so impersonal that, how can you guarantee that it would work for me? And I started my journey into human design, and learning about myself, and um, having my own aha moments where, studying my own design and saying, oh my gosh, that I feel so seen. That's so validating. That's why I've been like that my whole life, or that's why that moment in my career felt really frustrating to me. That's why this type of work tends to light me up. And so it was a recognition and a validation of, in the moments where I trusted myself, those were the moments that panned out for me. And the moments where I let my mind or logic kind of override my gut feeling were the moments where I was the most frustrated, or things didn't pan out in the way that I had hoped. And so, I've never had a 5-year plan to your point. Like, I've always just, I think, responded, I should say, to opportunities that presented themselves. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
I love that. For the audience, do you mind sharing, in summary, what human design is, particularly to you, and what your human design type is? Because I'd love to share mine as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so for the uninitiated, human design is your unique blueprint of how your energy sort of naturally flows. And we all have this, I call it a hardwiring and a programming, right? So your hardwiring is like truly like how you were born, your innate sense of being, and then the programming is kind of your mind and your psychology, and a lot of it can be affected by your conditioning and so it's almost like the nature and nurture, um, and it's a mix of, I think, like ancient wisdom, quantum mechanics. It's really heavy on energy and frequency, and tuning into our own natural frequencies, and learning how to live in the highest frequency version of ourself versus the lower frequency version. And so for you, I'm a 2-4 generator. What are you?
Oh, I love that. I am a 6-1 manifesting generator.
Awesome. So for the audience who doesn't know what that means, that could be a whole another episode.
Yes, and I would just love for you to share a little bit more about what the numbers mean to you, what being a generator means to you, um, and then I'd love to dig in deeper into the next question.
Sure. So everyone has a profile with two numbers, 1 through 6. And so mine is a 2-4. The first number kind of represents your mind, your psychology that I was mentioning before. And the second number represents more of your physiology and your body. And so the two is sort of this, uh, I would say, like a natural. And can be sometimes a hermit, right? They're just sort of like, I want to be in my own space, comfortable, doing the things I like to do. We love things that feel simple or easy or that just flow naturally for us. And then the 4 is almost in contradiction to the 2, is more of an influencer, networker, someone who really thrives on connection. And when I first kind of learned this, I really resonated with my 2. I was like, yes, I love my alone time. I get really sort of overwhelmed if I'm around people for too long, and I hate networking. Like the 4 line like did not resonate with me at all. But once I dug into it and studied it, I realized it wasn't about going into a crowded room full of strangers and, owning the room and being the life of the party, which is what a lot of people think networking is about. It's actually a gift for cultivating deep and trusted relationships. And that's how you and I met, Rifi, too. It's like we happened to sit next to each other and really just bond over common experiences. And so once I realized that was the strength, again, I could tap into it more and be more intentional about using it. And then from the generator perspective, what that means is you have this innate fuel to produce. Um, but the catch is it only works if you're doing things that you love. And if you say yes to things that aren't aligned, you can quickly burn out. And I think that was one of my biggest aha moments when I first studied my design was there were so many parts of my career where I could work 16-hour days, and there were other parts of my career where I couldn't even be motivated to write an email, right? And so again, leaning into that, and that's given me an additional layer of discernment. Now, as I'm pursuing opportunities, working for myself, what feels right to say yes to, and what opportunities aren't aligned for me.
Oh, I love that. I have the 2-4 human design pulled up, and as you're speaking to the hermit, so the 2-4 I'm reading is, yeah, the hermit, opportunist, influencer, networker, and I'm I realized I was actually a 6-2, so I do have the 2 on my chart as well. I believe mine's called the role model hermit, but the hermit piece. It's so fascinating. I really resonated with the 6 side, and the 2 I was curious about because I always saw myself as being someone who is outside of my space. And then I actually realized that I did need that to recenter myself and how much nourishment that alone time is bringing me. And so you had shared that. every founder should know how they're hardwired to work and lead. And you've spoken in many ways to how this has helped you in your business. Could you talk a little bit more about when you, how the knowledge of this has sort of deepened as you've progressed in your business, where oftentimes, someone listening right now might do the online questionnaire and learn about their human design. Um, However, it takes some time for that information to seep in and for us to either connect to different parts of this chart or actually implement what is written into our lives. And then it takes perhaps even longer to see the compounding benefits of that. I was hoping you could speak to all of this in the context of your journey as a founder now. And I would also be so interested to know how it's, as you shared, like strengthened your interaction with other founders as you've attempted to kind of share this.
Mhm. Yeah, so like I was saying, the number one thing is really tuning into my own like response mechanism and really knowing if an opportunity feels aligned or not. And then on the profile side, the 2-4, not having a 9 to 5, like not being chained to a desk, not having to show up to an office or, have my green light on Slack for a certain number of hours a day has really allowed me to play with and experiment with my natural rhythms of sometimes I go for a walk every day, right? And I just think. And I think that's part of that hermit is not necessarily that it's antisocial, but it's I do my best work when I just have the time and the space to let thoughts flow. And sometimes I'll land on a nugget and be like, that would be a great LinkedIn post. Or sometimes I'll come up with an idea and I'll like get home and write an email to a client and say, hey, I thought this would be a really fun campaign. Um, and for other founders, I think some of the key things are um, your decision making strategy, because we all have different ones. Like some people have an instant like gut reaction. Some people have to sort of think about things for a few days. Some people might have to talk it out before they decide. And so I think number one, like knowing that, and kind of going back to the guru guidance piece, especially in startup land, where you kind of hear all of this like hustle culture and like you have to move quickly and you have to, make snap decisions and how to make the right decisions. And if people aren't operating within their design, they can make the wrong decision and live to regret it, and have to kind of go back and undo it. So, and then there's also, I think, knowing your type. Are you wired to come up with ideas? Are you the visionary? Or are you like someone like me, the generator, who's wired to produce? And so, if you think about like a founder co-founder relationship, having one of both, is kind of that perfect storm. And each of the types play their own role in that way. And so, even when you think about building teams, right? What type of energy will help the team grow and flourish, and how do we interact with each other? So I think for founders to know how they're hardwired not only affects them and how they do their work, but also how they build the teams around them and how they find advisors, right? And how they kind of complete the picture.
I love that. And I loved what you shared about taking walks. I love my own walks and just being, even in a 9 to 5, working a work from home job, and then setting up my routines before and after work. For me, what's been so interesting is oftentimes having a work from home 9 to 5 means that I have opened myself up to taking conversations very early in the morning because I'm on Pacific time, which has sort of strengthened my desire to have these routines even before that. So it's made me a very early morning person, um, just to have those periods of time where I can sort of bookend my days with these nourishing activities. And so, in just embracing our natural rhythms for work-life balance, you've spoken to how you've discovered your own natural rhythms in this season. How have those rhythms shifted through all of these different moves? And Perhaps what's something that you could tell your younger self when they made their first move and was beginning to find her rhythm and work-life balance?
That's such a good question. And, I don't regret any of my decisions or any of my moves. I've learned so much from all of them and had such great experiences. But I wish I knew this about myself 20 years ago. Because I feel like for every environment that I was in, I sort of matched the energy of the environment, right? And so if the rest of the office was in early days, that's what was expected. If the rest of the office, pulled late nights, that's what I did. And again, like not knowing how to listen to myself led to burnout. And so I like my advice to my younger self, if I could go back, was I think tap into your physical body more. I think we're in a society, we're all conditioned that the mind is sort of the ultimate intelligence, and we often let our mind overrule what we know we need. But the body is really this source of truth for us. It will tell us what we need if we know how to listen.
Oh, I love that, especially coming from someone physics trained, journalist trained, and just having all of these experiences. I think this piece of advice coming from you particularly will resonate so deeply and is so needed. And I absolutely agree. Sort of honing into the topic of listening to yourself and kind of wrapping up our main set of conversations. What are some of the micro strategies you've developed to help founders distinguish between the external noise and their authentic voice and really enable them to listen to themselves?
The number one thing I like to tell founders is all tactics work. You just have to find the one that's right for you. So a lot of founders I talk to, there's so much guidance and advice out there of you have to post 5 times a week on LinkedIn, or you have to write a certain way, or your pitch deck needs to like look a certain way or sound a certain way. And some of that advice is good, but I think we get so bogged down in what we should do and when we should do it. But it's more about what feels right to you. Are you a good writer? Are you a good speaker? Do you really just need to pick up your phone and put on the microphone and talk into Chat GPT and help you organize your own thoughts? Right. And so I really think it is about helping them find their authentic voice, first of all. Most of the technically brilliant people I've worked with in my career have also been some of the best communicators. And I think society sort of beats that out of them. They tell them that they're not good communicators, they have to dumb it down. Um, and in my experience, if you again ask questions, like give them the space to be authentic, they are some of the most eloquent, some of the most entertaining, some of the most engaging communicators when you get them in their natural element and you don't try to erase that from them. And so, that strategy of just like, what is it that you want to say? Without feeling you have to perform in the way that people are telling you that you need to perform.
I love this, and that is, yeah, resonating with me deeply. I'm sure anyone listening is also really just like gonna hold on to that. I would love to jump in to the rapid fire questions if you're ready.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. What does wellness mean to you today?
To me personally, wellness is a holistic activity. And so every day I have an inventory, especially if it's a day where I feel off or not well. And it has 4 buckets. It's movement, nourishment, sunshine, and rest. And I try to take inventory of which ones I had more of and which ones feel depleted and try to address those accordingly without having any kind of plan about going to the gym every day or like very concrete tactics. It's just more about big buckets.
I love that so much. I'm envisioning that as like circle almost, like a quadrant
Like a pie
and
chart.
yes,
Yeah.
and then having like, okay, like did I get sunshine today? Did I get movement today? Did I get rest? I love that. Alrighty. What does leadership mean to you today?
Today, especially, I think leadership means being unafraid, being willing to be the person to step out, to step into your own convictions, to break free from what you think people want to hear from you or what you think is the right thing to say, and really leading from that authentic place.
Oh my gosh, in this season of my life, conviction is my word. I started the year with one word of the year, and it's just like evolved season by season as I've just like been rapidly working on that. And then this season, it's conviction.
I love it.
So I'm really holding on to that. Is there anything else that you would like to share from any of the questions that I asked? Anything that you wanted to dig further into?
I'll just say that I really think there's a big shift happening from the past couple of decades where frameworks and playbooks, were the driving force behind a lot of success. And we're moving into an era of individuality, authenticity. And I know those are buzzwords right now, but the human design element for me really grounds those in tangible and concrete ways. And if it's okay, I would love to offer your listeners, for anyone listening, I would love to offer a free 60-minute strategy call. If you are a founder and any of these resonated with you, whether it's on the communications and marketing side or the human design side, anyone can go to founder.laurenrugani.com and book directly with me.
I love that. Oh my goodness. I am so excited for folks to reach out to you. Thank you so, so much for joining me. And all of Lauren's details will be in the show notes as well. So I'm really excited for everyone to reach out.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thank you.